Hello and welcome to Niaga Spotlight with me, Tamina Kauschi. Niaga Spotlight goes through the week in business and future affairs, market watch, industries, analysis and insights. We've got you covered right here on Niaga Spotlight. Well, today on analysis and also kicking off Merdeka month for us here on Niaga Spotlight, we are covering the very interesting topic of conserving Harimau Malaya. So, allow me to share a couple of factoids before we get started with the segment. Of course, the Malayan tiger, Harimau Malaya, was recognized as its own subspecies. This was back in 2004. However, it is considered the national animal of Malaysia, and this is actually despite the fact that there is no official law or even declaration. So true to its name though, Malayan tigers are a symbol of not just courage, but also strength. They are represented in our various national emblems, including, of course, for the police force of Malaysia, for the national football team, and more importantly, also our Jata Negara, the Malaysian coat of arms. So at the same time, though, it is increasingly concerning. There are fewer than 150 Malayan tigers left in the wild. The most recent report of a tiger which was found dead in Bentong is also the third such death in 6 months, and also the fifth in 2024 that we know of. So this sharp decline in wild tiger numbers is deeply concerning, as tiger conservation also, of course, maintains ecological sustainability in Malaysia. Dr. Henry Chan, who's Conservation Director with WWF, which stands for the Worldwide Fund for Nature in Malaysia, joins me now in the studio to discuss conserving Harimau Malaya. Dr. Henry, how are you doing today?
Thank you, ma'am.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for being with us here today. So, Dr. Henry, I would love for you to start off by painting us a picture all about how exactly WWF's Malayan Tiger Project actually got started from its roots right to where we are today now.
So thank you. Sometimes in the mid-2010, we have found that there are human-wildlife conflicts in Kelantan. And as we examined the study, we found that it's due to the lack of prey, lack of habitat, that the tigers has gone out of their natural habitat to look for food. And eventually, as we work with the state agencies, we found that there is a large forest in Upper Perak, which is the Belum complex. And we decided to work at that place because tigers need natural habitat. They need large area for protected areas. So that's how we began to work with the government of Perak to support tiger conservation in that place.
Fantastic. So all the way from the roots in Belum, right, Dr. Henry? Now tell me about why the fact that outside of the tiger being so visible as a national symbol, we see it for the Royal Malaysian Police, we see it everywhere we look in children's animations, and of course the Malaysian contingent is of course currently representing us right now at the Paris 2024 Olympics, carrying those same tiger stripes. But why is it so essential that we actually need to look at conservation as a necessity, not something which is nice to have?
Well, I think it's important that we understand why forest is very important, which is a natural habitat for wildlife. Forest provides the services that we need. Actually, forests up in the mountains induce rain clouds, and clouds then gather moisture and the rain. And this is a source of water into rivers. Forest also helps to regulate climate.
That's right.
If you go under the trees, you feel very cool. Why is it so? Because the trees provide the shade, and the trees and the leaves absorb sunlight, and this sunlight is then as an energy to convert carbon dioxide, the air that we breathe, into oxygen and water as well. So you can imagine if the whole place is full of trees with different layers, it cools down the atmosphere, it provides the services that we need. And most important of all, the trees in the forest provide habitat for wildlife such as tigers.
Exactly. So focusing back on the tigers, it was also very recently Global Tiger Day. Tell us a little bit more about WWF's Global Tiger Day celebrations. How did that go?
So this year, which we organized last week, we organized a run for tigers, and we have 1,200 people, way above our expectation of 1,000. In that event, we have our minister, Minister Nick Nasmi from the Ministry of Natural Resource and the Environment to be there with us. We have speeches to talk to the participants how important tiger is, how tigers is important for the environment, and how the environment in turn is important for our well-being. So we're happy that it turned out to be very well organized.
Fantastic. So we're very glad to see
Yeah.
that the support is happening, at least at the annual days. But at the same time, though, Dr. Henry, now it's time to dig deeper. So the future, of course, of our Malaysian tigers is at stake because their existence is threatened by several factors.
Yes.
I actually want to go through them quite systematically and methodically
Yes.
so that we can try and understand at each point there are actually critical investments as well as collaborations and recognition that will help to make it build towards a best outcome, right? So let's start by beginning about the role of poaching and illegal wildlife trade.
Yeah. So first of all, we need to understand what causes the extinction of tigers. As you mentioned earlier, in Malaysia, the official record is less than 150 individuals.
That's right.
So,
may I ask
yeah.
you, originally speaking, at least from the time we started having modern historical
Yeah.
records, how many estimated tigers were there?
So as a reference, in 1950s, before we become an independent state, there was an estimate of about 3,000 individual tigers in Peninsular Malaysia.
Just in
this
Peninsula?
Yes, this
Wow.
is based on the estimate of forest that we had then, and the amount of forest that can harbour such tiger population.
Understood, exactly. So coming back into the fact you were mentioning, so there's about 150 on record now, and let's go into the poaching and wildlife trade.
Yes, so tigers is a highly favoured luxurious food item in the Far East. In some communities, if you want to treat people, you serve them with tiger meat. It's very exotic. Just like among our own community, you serve with shark fins. But it's not only used as a food, but tigers is also seen as an aphrodisiac. The whiskers can be used for acupuncture, the bones, strengthen male virility and so forth. So it creates huge demand among certain sectors of society in the Far East, and they pay a lot of money. So if you catch a tiger in the forest, it's considered as a jackpot. We learned that among the black market one male tiger may fetch up to $500,000 ringgit in our own land. But when it goes into China and Vietnam, the prices escalate. Yeah. So tiger is part of the international wildlife trade, and the demand and the price that is available attracts poachers to come in, and we do have professional poachers coming from the Indo-Chinese countries, and they spend months in the forest. And these guys are real professional. Even our own orang asli rangers would have difficulties, looking for them. And these guys spend months in the forest.
Correct. So the only way in which to basically form a protective layer for the remaining tigers is to have, of course, your anti-poaching patrol officers. There's Project Stampede. Tell me more about that.
Right. So we call Project Stampede. It's basically to flood the forest.
Named.
Yes, to flood the forest
Right.
and have rangers continuously be positioned to patrol the forest. And in Belum itself, in Royal Belum State Park and the surrounding forest called Temenggor, we have 15 tiger teams. And each team will spend 15 days in a month living in the forest, trekking throughout the forest. And over the last few years, they have trekked thousands and thousands of kilometers. And they're all very vigilant in looking out for snares, signs of poachers. And if they do, they remove them. And if they see any signs of poachers, and because we are not authorized to do anything with the poachers, we will then report back to the authority, who would then immediately, if possible, to come and apprehend those poachers.
And how are these anti-poaching experts, their training, etc.? Of course, it involves financial allocations. Where does WWF actually find the funds for this?
Okay, so each team would have 5 persons. So you got a team leader, and they're supported by 4 other rangers. And these guys spend 15 days in a month. Typically, we spend about 100,000 per year to support one team. So we're very grateful for foundations like Maybank Foundation, who supports us. We also have other organizations, a variety of them. That includes our international support from our sister organizations in Poland, in Switzerland, in the US, and so forth.
Fantastic. And it's also very encouraging to know that Pahang also as a state, they have actually received an EFT, ecological fiscal transfer for biodiversity conservation amounting to almost 40 million ringgit. So moving along from there, Dr. Henry, I also wanted to focus now on looking at habitat loss, because when you have deforestation and you have fragmentation of the tiger's habitat itself, it also has ramifications that are like a domino effect.
Yes.
Tell me about this.
Right. So earlier you asked me when is the time reference, right? So 1950. You know, the years before independence, we have huge forests in Malaya. Only the western part of Malaya will be opened up for rubber plantations and tin mines and so forth. But basically, the whole of Peninsula Malaysia is covered by forests, and this is the home of the tigers. Now, as we achieve independence in the 70s, we need to build an economy in you know, specific for the landless peasants, yeah, in the Malay heartlands. So government in the 1970s to create land for these landless peasants, they then open up forests, convert them into plantations, and resettle them. Right. So if you drive all the way from Johor Bahru through the old road going up to Gua Musang in Kelantan, you find palm oil plantations crisscrossing Peninsula Malaysia. And this has resulted in the deforestation and fragmentation of forests. Of course, the basic reason is to create economy, but the consequence, the unintended consequence, is that now our tigers have lost habitat, and as a result, the population has shrunk, and this is compounded by the fact that, you know, they are highly priced in the international wildlife trade. So to tackle this tiger loss, we must address these two in parallel manner. Stem up poaching and make sure the habitat remains and get reconnected.
Exactly. So understanding the fact that it's going to be quite a challenge for the habitat to be reconnected, tell us about the role of especially palm oil, as you were mentioning. Now, palm oil, of course, is an essential commodity for the Malaysian global market as well as for local industrial players. How do we actually reconcile it harmoniously with the fact that properly managed, it can lead to the tiger's habitat being protected?
Yes. So for that, we have to seek inspiration and experience of the work that we have done elsewhere. Within Malaysia itself, in the state of Sabah. So in Sabah, we have pioneered a program called the Living Landscape Approach. The Living Landscape Approach has got three principles. It's called protect, produce, and restore. Right. So in Sabah, you know, like in Peninsula Malaysia as well, they have large forests where they have protected it. So we identify such forests, which is important for wildlife conservation, for the orangutans, for the elephants, and for the services that this forest provides. So we work with the agencies and the authorities to protect them. This is a protect pillar. Now, as in Peninsula Malaysia, many part of our land has been converted into palm oil plantations. So the idea then is to work with the palm oil plantations in such important areas that, look, you have a responsibility to protect the forest. One way to do so is to ensure that no poachers go through your plantations and into the forest. So they act as a shield. In Malay, called perisai. Yeah? So the first defense from poachers entering the forest. Secondly, as we mentioned earlier, the palm oil plantations is also a cause for the fragmentation of forests. So wherever there are two forest blocks, they are important for wildlife to cross across, but this has been fragmented by the plantations through scientific survey of the wildlife, like the orangutan and elephants. Right. Then, wherever they have evidence that this place has been used for the movement, we then ask the companies to set this land aside for wildlife corridor. So we reconnect them. And we have companies who actually have done that, right? You know, tighted land, we set aside. So this is the ideas that we are now bringing over to Peninsula Malaysia to look into how forests that are important for wildlife and for tigers, they're fragmented, to can be reconnected through the palm oil plantations.
Fantastic. So like a lot of behind the scenes work is occurring. At the same time though, Dr. Henry, I'd just like your initial thoughts first. Do you feel that the recent spike in tiger deaths that we have been seeing visibly covered in news headlines, especially this year, is it indicative of broader ecological degradation happening in the depths of the forest?
Okay. I think there are two observations. The first is that the causes of human-wildlife conflicts and death is associated in places that clearly they are deforestation. Secondly, yeah, you know, with the warming of the environment, the tigers and the prey may need to go to new places, and therefore, you know, when they move, they see a road, and typically wildlife, when they cross at night time, when it happens that when the car is passing through with the highlight.
Yes, quite often these are early morning, late night crashes.
Right.
Yeah,
and when they got this highlight, like we got blinded.
Deer in headlights, but tiger in headlights.
Same thing as well, right? They just got blinded, they become immobilized, and they get freeze on the road. And the car is too late to stop, and they hit them, and this way the roadkill happens.
That's right.
But then we don't have we don't have the data to pinpoint that it's due to climate change or warming of climate that result in the movement of animals. But I think...
But we have been experiencing, in fact, a few weeks ago on Sunday, it was actually globally the hottest it's ever been on that specific day of July.
Yes, that's right. In fact, over the last week or so, I'm constantly going to water my plants because I started to plant trees in the land behind my house. And yeah, it could be true, but I think we need to do more. We need to basically do more research on that, because we haven't done that exercise to link up this data, warming environment with movement of the wildlife.
Understood. Some thoughts there. Yeah. Now moving into a different sector, which is of course looking at availability of prey. Now that obviously, the tiger being a big cat, the biggest one that we have in our jungles, that is an essential for their survivability. Tell us a little bit more about the overhunting of the tiger's main prey and how we can actually look at remedying this in stages.
Okay, so when we talk about hunting, we need to look into two aspects. One is the hunting by hunters to go to the forest and hunt using guns.
Right.
And the other is the putting of snares to trap the wildlife. So let us address the second part, the snares first. So when poachers put up snares in the forest, whenever, and they put, these are professional poachers, right? They know movement of animals, they see tracks, they see signs that this is the areas frequented by wildlife. So wherever wildlife come across the snares, and inevitably they'll step on them, and they'll be trapped. The snares are not, you know, they don't select, right? Any animals that go through, they will be trapped.
It could be a wild boar, it could be a tiger.
It could be a deer, and so on. So this has resulted in the loss of the wildlife. Now, on the hunting part, they are mainly done by our own local people for food and consumption. These are weekend sports hunters. And typically they don't go too far into the forest like the poachers. They'll spend about 2 or 3 nights in the forest over the weekend, and they use guns. So the extent of the impact between the two, obviously snaring is much more problematic as compared to hunting.
Understood. Could you tell me a little bit more about WWF's good work to basically reintroduce to the ecosystem some of the traditional prey of the Malayan tiger?
Yeah, so the most important thing is sambal deer. So sambal deer being the biggest
deer
prey,
species.
Of the deer species, and biggest prey animal in the forest, has also declined over the last decades or so due to the snaring crisis. So we are working with the Ministry of Natural Resources and Pehilitan, the Department of Wildlife and National Parks, to reintroduce. So we have a few contractors who have been given licenses to breed the sambal deer, but sambal deer takes a long time because they're big. Take a year and a half, you know, for them to breed again. So once you have got the small deers, they have to be grown into adulthood. Then they will be reintroduced into the wild, say in Rehoboam State Park. You need to create pastures for them at the place, so that they in turn will propagate, and as the population increases, then they will go into the wild and this way they become part of the natural ecosystem. And we hope this will become food for the tigers, and they will bring up the food stock for the tigers. Secondly, wild boar is also been hunted as a prey, but because of the African swine flu that swept all of Borneo and the last few years in Peninsula as well. So wild boar
is decimated.
has also, yes,
Yeah.
that's right. So there's also an effort now to reintroduce wild boar back into the forest.
So lots of efforts being made for prey augmentation as we see it.
Yes.
And perhaps moving towards 2030, which is just 6 short years
Yes.
away. What are your thoughts on how our efforts are going to show fruit in the near future, Dr. Henry?
But let me go back to
Sure.
the onset of the problems, right? So first of all, it's a wildlife trade. You know, tigers has a huge demand, so you need concerted effort involving the police, the intelligence. You need to have Interpol. You work with organizations like Traffic who are actually getting intelligence across, you know, the global trade.
Yes.
And we all know that the syndicate that are involved in wildlife crime is not just looking for wildlife. They are also involved in illegal arms smuggling, drugs and so forth, and human trafficking. So basically, this is a crime. Yes, it's an organized crime throughout the world. So to track the mastermind and so on, you need to use the AMLA, the Anti-Money Laundering Act, to trace, you know, transaction and so forth. So this is really complicated. So this one. The second is, as I said along, is about habitat management. You know, it's an economic driver of the country that you need to provide jobs and so on, right? And then you got the federal-state relationship because, you know, the ministries sets the direction and the policies, but the state owns the resources, which is land, water, and forest. So that federal-state relationship need to be addressed as well. So back in 2019, we had the opportunity to have an audience with the Conference of Rulers. So you might know that our royal patron is the Sultan of Perak.
That's correct.
So he consented for us to go and have the audience. We went to see the Sultan of Kedah, who was the chair of the conference then, and he also consented to be brought to the presence. So in the Conference of Rulers, we shared the plight of the tigers. We asked Tuanku, please don't allow our tigers to face the fate of the rhinoceros, which we have lost, as well as the leatherback turtles. So and we call on the Tuankus that we need the highest political will in the country, like in India, Nepal, and Bhutan, where the populations have increased. So we need a whole national concerted effort to be chaired by the Prime Minister. Yeah, and so that was done, and we believe that that 2019 was a turning point, and subsequently we see Ministry of Finance providing budget, the national budget of 100 million, more than 100 million every year. Just last year also, Minister of Finance, Prime Minister announced the allocation of biodiversity sukuk, a biodiversity bond based on Islamic Sharia principles of 1 billion ringgit. So we believe this creates long-term sustainable finance to support the tiger conservation work. So this government effort needs to be recognized, and that it requires whole of society effort. Now back to your point about 2030. So tigers is just one species that we see getting extinct in Malaysia, but there are numerous other species that are lost throughout the world. Yeah. So the global community, so now I'm talking about at the international front now.
Those levels.
Yeah, at the global level, you have the Convention on Biological Diversity. They have developed with a 10-year global biodiversity framework, the GBF. Yeah, and it's very famous. It's called 30 by 30. So 30 is the year 2030, and the 30% of planet Earth needs to be conserved. So important areas in every country for wildlife conservation, for ecosystem services and so on should be conserved, protected and well managed. Wherever areas are important but they are degraded, we need to restore them. So these are 30%. And also we have targets to work with the agribusiness, in this case palm oil plantation, timber and so on.
Yes, not leaving behind the smallholders either.
Yeah, and one very important target is target 19, which is for the global north, the richer countries, to provide funding of 250 billion US dollars per year, yeah, to support conservation worldwide.
What would Malaysia's portion potentially be from that 250 B?
Well, this is a pledge, yeah,
Sure.
of the government that the Global South and the developing countries demanded of the Global North to support. So how much is needed? So I go back to our tiger conservation. So earlier I mentioned about one team of 5 people requires about 100,000 to
Correct.
take care of the forest. One team of this 5% ranger would cover 10,000 hectares to effectively patrol them. Our tiger areas is about 2 million hectares. So based on the math, we need about 200 teams. So if you just multiply by the thousands, we need billions of dollars, right?
That's
so,
right.
And hundreds of millions of dollars to support the conservation. When we talk about restoration, it costs a lot more. It's billions that we are needed. Based on our experiences in Sabah, again, we need $1,700 per hectare to undertake restoration. And we need 5 years to do that, because you don't plant trees and let it be, you got to maintain it.
Exactly.
So
at least until they reach initial maturity, 5 years, right?
Yes, that's right. So you need to have identified the actual needs on the ground, where they are, and the scale of intervention before you can come up with that. So I just said that at least 10 billion is needed.
And the work does continue.
Yes,
Dr.
over
Henry.
a long-term time frame.
Absolutely. Dr. Henry, thanks for the conversation so far. We take a quick break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with Niaga Spotlight. Welcome back to Niaga Spotlight. Still with me, Tamina Kausji. And today, of course, as part of our Merdeka month specials, we are covering conserving Harimau Malaya. Dr. Henry Chan, Conservation Director with WWF-Malaysia, is in the studios with me. Dr. Henry, to continue the conversation, let's move now into the fact that, of course, WWF-Malaysia's tiger conservation work, it consists of several moving components. We have, of course, discussed some of them in depth just earlier. And how are they all designed to overall reduce the threats towards tigers as well as other wildlife which are living in the same landscape? We touched a little bit on it earlier. Let's go deeper into details.
Yes, so broadly, we can define our work into 2 categories. Number one, as I said earlier, which is the international wildlife trade, and the second is about habitat management. So for international wildlife trade, we have been given the responsibility to help the government of Perak to support tiger conservation in the Belum Temago landscapes. This is the upper part of the Perak River that borders with Thailand. So we mentioned about our Project Stampede. We have 15 tiger teams that patrol the forest. Second is we support the Perak State Park Authority to fundraise, not just for ourselves but also for the activities of the park, together with other partners. The second work is to work in terms of the evidence, right? You know, we put so much effort and finances to support the tiger team. What evidence do we have that it actually works, right? So it's based on
That's really important, right? Measuring and then looking at scalability.
Right.
Yeah.
So we need evidence. We are a science-based organization. So what we then do is our second program is on tiger monitoring.
Right.
We set hundreds of camera traps systematically across the forest. And these camera traps, the reason it's called a camera traps is it has a signal. When wildlife passes through the signal, it will trigger them and take a picture.
Right.
And from this, we have millions of images, all kinds of wildlife. And from these images, then our team will then do analysis and use certain methodology to look into the population density and the increasing number of tigers. And so these 2 things happen. The first is that compared to the baseline year of 2017, when we only had 3 teams, at that point, our teams discovered more than 200 snares in the forest. And as we increased the number to 15 over the last few years, just the last 2 years, we encountered 0 active snares, which is a real success. Because, you know, when as you patrol thousands of kilometers in the forest and don't see snares, you feel very, very happy.
You breathe easier as well,
yes.
And also looking at the safety of the teams of the orang asli who are involved,
yes,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
And also the wildlife, right? So with what a threat, animals feel at ease, there's no more trap and so on. And then we also saw evidence of baby tigers. We celebrate, right?
Of course.
Full moon.
They're coming back a little bit.
They're coming back. So we have seen a few numbers. Of course, we cannot reveal the numbers, and otherwise, we attract poachers to go to Royal Belum. And as they grow, they become juvenile. So it's really evidence that our effort has come to fruition. So these are the two main things that we do in Royal Belum, is addressing anti-poaching. Now, the second category of work on habitat management. So we talked about prey augmentation earlier. Yeah, so we work with the authorities. We also work with the local orang aslis. And these are the Jahai community. The Jahai is one of the 18th orang asli groups in Peninsular Malaysia, and they are part of the hunting and gathering group. Yeah, so you don't resettle them. This is the progressive policy of Malaysia, that when you have got communities that are living in harmony with nature, you are allowed to live with them. Similarly, in Taman Negara, you got the Batek also living there. But as hunters and gatherers, we need to work with them so that they don't go and hunt all kinds of animals for the food. So it's also about looking for alternatives. And living in the forest also, they are in contact with wildlife. Of course, with tigers, avoid them. But you have also got other animals like elephants.
We have seen some conflict in recent years too. Yeah.
Right. So some awareness how to deal with elephants need also be inculcated with them. And as we said earlier, the orang aslis are also our guardians. So we work with them. We're very happy that the European Union gave us a grant of $1 million to train these local communities to become stewards. So this is a very interesting story. We believe that over 5 years, these local communities who are illiterate, they are experts in the forest, and through certain curriculum of poaching, camera traps, and so forth, they will be given a certificate. With a certificate, they can now become employed as a government servant. It's really nice, right? You stay at home, you get your salary, and you help to become guardian of the forest. There's a goal. So we work a lot with the orang aslis in that place, and make sure that they themselves are the ears and eyes of us. Yeah. Exactly.
The natural and original stewards of the forest. It's just that now they are officially recognized, and they also earn an income for it. Yeah.
So you got the professional groups, which I say professional because they are given salaries, right, to patrol deep in the forest.
Now. Yeah.
But those other community members, right, those living along the lakes and the rivers, they are the eyes, right? You see anybody who is not supposed to be there, then they are the first line of defense as well.
Early warning system.
Yeah, exactly, yes.
A human early warning system.
They can also be the one who can be involved in restoration, planting trees. They can also be trained to become, the prey augmentation. They can look after wildlife and so on. So just imagine that now in the national park, the park authorities actually empowers the local community to become guardian of the national park. This is the best example we can show to the world.
Exactly. So our best example that we are already working on very deeply though, there's one last area I'd like for us to focus on before we end out our discussion. Dr. Henry, I want to talk more about more strategies for increasing our ecological corridors and habitat connectivity. I'll actually move to perhaps asking for your opinion before we begin on two of the more recent incidents which were also highlighting other huge species which are impacting. You also have other big cats like panthers. A driver accidentally recently hit one on the East Coast Expressway. There was also the issue of the 2 young children, unfortunately toddlers, who passed away after ingesting, snacks that were laced with rat poison that was intended for wildlife in the area.
Yeah, the case of the panther in the East Coast Expressway, right, is actually a new road, and this is where they're still forested in the northeast of Peninsular Malaysia. So similar to tigers and other wildlife, when they cross the road, at that time they got blinded by the car's light, and so they get crashed, right. So again, we talk about the necessity to ensure that our roads are built. We call wildlife-friendly infrastructure. The most important thing is that to avoid such occurrence of human-wildlife conflict is to avoid the road to go into forests. Now we do recognize that infrastructure like this, government need to acquire land, and compensate. It's very expensive. Therefore, they go to the forest, which you don't have to compensate. but the consequence is that then the conflict with wildlife comes very true. So wherever road cannot be aligned out of forest, then what they can do is to do more survey in the forest, identify where are the places that wildlife used to go. You know, the biologists will tell you that there are theories. I'm an anthropologist. I used to live with hunter-gatherers. We know where are the places that wildlife tend to go. And if you got road across in those places, then you build what we call viaducts, where you have the road, you know, elevated highway, then animals can go underneath and go through. So this is one way to mitigate the human-wildlife conflicts. The second incident is there was a case of toddlers who died somewhere in Kulim.
That's right, Kulim and Kedah.
Yeah, they ate red poison lead snakes, yeah, which is to again, you know, kill wildlife. So this accident can be avoided, right? But the question then is, why do villagers put this poison in the farms? Again, it goes back to what we said earlier. It's about deforestation. It's about human population opening up forests and settling into those areas. Therefore, the encounter is very close.
Correct.
Now, to address that, yesterday I just attended a newly launched roadmap on planetary health by the Minister of Mosti, and the planetary health talks about the planetary boundaries and how we human beings need to live in harmony with nature. So it's all about having sufficient forest areas protected, and wherever there's place that humans come into contact with wildlife, there should be systems in which the contact is reduced. So in the context of Malaysia now, which I think provides an example again of how planetary health can be managed in Malaysia is, look, we go back to the fundamentals, right? Yeah. So Malaysia has pledged at least half the country, at least 50% to be forest cover. But this forest cannot be here and there, right? You don't want to have scattered islands, patches of forest, but there must be large contiguous blocks of forest.
That's right.
And they must be interconnected. So the Central Forest Spine Master Plan is that plan. It connects all the large forests together, and wherever there are fragmentation, they attempt to reconnect them. Right. And so these linkages are very important. Does this work? So again, we are inspired by our work done by our colleagues in other countries. So in a place bordering India and Nepal, the Tarai landscape, the Tarai Arc, is where there are a series of protected areas. They are connected, but they're also fragmented like we in Malaysia. So what the government do is to allocate spaces between these protected areas and make its wildlife corridors. And these wildlife corridors are restored back, and they get local communities to help undertake restoration and patrol the forest. Now, when the tiger population in this national park has increased, the juveniles would look for new places, and this created forest becomes a link to other forests. So these other forests that were once empty, no tigers, have now been populated with tigers. So that's why India and Nepal has increased the tiger population. So evidence show that you can do it when you have these forests that are interconnected. So we need to look into such kind of master plan. And today there are plantations. So I talk a lot with palm oil industries and say that, look, you need to do this, but we do not expect you to cut down the palm trees and plant them. But you know that this is the part of the plan. So that in your replanting exercise, then you consider whether this plants need to be planted back into the forest. In some areas, right, the river bank, you're not even supposed to plant palm oil to the edge of the rivers. So by law, you should have followed the law. Yeah. So this allows then places that within the Central Forest Spine Master Plan, which today we see is impossible to reconnect them, but we know it can be done through time, yeah, through sustainable palm oil industries. And we believe that it's also the responsibility of the palm oil as a sector in Malaysia to undertake this, because they are the ones who actually were the reason why our forests have been fragmented.
That's
so
right.
Today, it is their responsibility, and it also benefits them, because the vision is, if the palm oil is being produced in tiger-friendly landscapes, can the palm oil product not have a stem of tiger there? And then it can reach to the premium markets.
Exactly. So keeping all these wider goals in mind. Dr. Henry, it's been such an insightful and enriching conversation. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
Well, that's all we have time for today on Niaga Spotlight. We'll see you again next week with more business analysis and insights. I'm Tamina Kaushi signing off for now. Here's to a productive week ahead.